Hello friends, today we will discuss about some C# programming concepts. So here is the today's topic, that is constructor. So here is the list. What is constructor in C#? How many types are there in constructor? Explain constructor with the example. So we will discuss all these topics with the types along with the examples one by one. So let's begin. So first one, we have a definition of constructor. So what is constructor? A constructor in C# is a special method in a class that is automatically invoked when an object of that class is created. So constructor is it is a kind of special method. If we want to create any instance of that particular class, or while creating the object of that particular class, then it is automatically invoked, means it is automatically created. Suppose if we do not provide any constructor to that class, then the compiler will create by default one constructor by itself. And if we want to create our constructor, then we can create that constructor also. It is mainly used to initialize fields or properties of a class. So it is mainly used if we have to perform, we want to add some fields or properties, any values we want to add into that class, then we can use these through the constructor. It has the same name as that of class. So whenever we want to create a constructor, so it has the same name as that of class, otherwise it will give an error. It does not return any value, not even void. So constructor does not return any value, means it will not return any value, not even void, means not any null value, not any string integer value. It is called automatically when object is created using new keyword. So if we create an instance through the new keyword, then it is automatically invoked while creating the object of that particular class. So this is the general syntax of the constructor. Here we have one class, and here we have the constructor, means it is a default constructor or parameterless constructor, where we have the same name as that of class. So only in that case we can create a constructor. Next we have creating instantiation and initialization of constructor. So how we can create, instantiate or initialize? Instantiation means creating object with a new keyword. So if we want to create an instance, we can create or achieve through the new keyword. Initialization, assigning values using constructor. If we want to assign some values to that particular field, we can perform these, we can achieve this by constructor. Example, we have here we have person class, and here we are using new keyword to creating an instance of that particular class, and here we have a parameter constructor, means where we are passing parameters. So here we have one class where we have one field name and one constructor with same name as that of class, where we are passing one parameter string values. Here we have one display method where we are displaying the values. So here we have the new keyword where we are creating the instance, and here we are using the parameterized constructor where we are passing one parameter. So this is all about the creating the instance and initializing the values through the constructor. Next we have types of constructors. So how many types we have in constructors? First one we have default constructor, means parameterless constructor. Second one we have parameterized constructor. Third one we have copy constructor, and next is constructor overloading, and next one is private constructor. So we will see all these constructor types one by one with example. First one we have default constructor. So what is default constructor? It has no parameters. So if we want to create a default constructor, we cannot provide any parameters to that default constructor because it is parameterless constructor. It is called automatically when object is created. So it is automatically called whenever we want to create an object of that particular class, it will automatically invoked. So here we have one class, and here we have default constructor. So if we do not provide this default constructor, the compiler will automatically create it on the creation of object. And next we have one method, and here we are using new keyword to creating the instance of that class, and here we are using default constructor, means parameterless constructor. We do not provide any value to this constructor. Now let's see this one in Visual Studio. So first we can create one class, employee class. Here we can provide some values. So here we will discuss about default constructor. So main thing is that if we want to create any constructor, it is having the same name as that of class. Only in that case we can create that constructor. So this is the default constructor. We needn't provide any value. So if we want to initialize the value, we can initialize inside it. So here we provided two values. Next we can create one method where we can return some types. Display employee info. Here if we want to return value of employee ID plus employee name, and we have to return this response. So here we have default constructor, and here we provided two values and with one method. So how we can instantiate this one for default constructor especially? Here first we can create the instance with the new keyword. So this is default constructor, and if we want to display these values, first we have to get the result because that is string type result, so we have to use the string type response of that method, and with the console we can display these values. Default constructor response values. Now let's see the result. So we have these two values, employee ID and employee name, for default constructor. So in this way we can initialize default constructor, means parameterless constructor. Meterless constructor. Okay. Suppose if we do not provide any values to this one, then how it will react in this situation? And here if we do not provide any values, so it will display 0 for integer and null for string value. So here is the thing, if we want to provide some values, we can provide in this way some values. Employee name, as we already discussed about this one, we can provide these values with the two ways. So this is a one way, second way is with the curly braces. So if you did not saw the last video for the creation of the class, so you can see that lecture also. So here is the thing, we provided two values without creating any default constructor. Now let's see what is the behavior in this scenario. So here we have two values, employee ID and employee name. If we do not provide any constructor, then it will create, the compiler will create automatically by itself, and it will use this parameterless constructor. So this is the main concept of default constructor or parameterless constructor. Next we have parameterized constructor. it takes arguments to initialize fields. Where we want to pass some parameters through that constructor, that is parameterized constructor. Simply here we have the parameterized constructor where we are passing two values, means id and name, and that is the same thing where we are initializing the employee, means class, and where we are passing two parameters, two values. Now let's see this one also, parameterized constructor. Constructor employee, teacher id, string name, id is equal to id, employee name equal to name. So this is parameterized constructor where we are passing two parameters, means first one is id and second one is name. So if we want to pass some values directly, we can initialize while creating the instance of that class. So here we can pass the values, means this one, now let's see this one result. So here we have the result, employee id and employee name, but that is parameterized constructor. Okay, so this is all about parameterized constructor where we want to pass some parameters through that constructor. Then we can do in this way, and we can simply add the values to that fields, and we can display through the method. Next we have a copy constructor. So what is copy constructor? The means specifies that if we want to copy the values or some fields, so that is copy constructor. It initializes an object by copying values from another object. So it will initialize any object, means suppose if we have two objects, and if we want to copy that first object values to the second object, then we can do with copy constructor. So here is the thing, we have this constructor, means parameterized constructor, where we have one parameter where we are passing one parameter, and second we create a copy constructor with class name where we are passing the object of that first class. So that is the thing, first we initialize the class with the values. So this is the normal constructor, and this is the copy constructor where we are passing the object directly through the parameter to that copy constructor. So that is a copy constructor simply. So it will copy the values directly from the first object into the second object. So with this method we can display this one. Now let's see this one also. Suppose if we want to copy constructor, public employee emp PID is equal to emp dot emp id. Okay, emp name is employee name like that. So this is a copy constructor. We are not providing any values. Okay, it is simply copying from the first object to the second object. Now how we can do here? Suppose this is the first object. First object means normal constructor. Here we want to create the copy constructor. Okay, so here we do not provide any values for this one because this is copy constructor. It will copy the values from any object, means from first object. And how we can pass these values? We can simply pass the object directly, no worries. Directly we pass this object, and it will copy all the objects, all the values from the first object and put it into this one, and directly we can display these values. and if we want to display these values, we can display in this way. So here we are using copy constructor. We are not providing copy constructor any value. It is copying the first object values directly and displaying through this one. Now let's see this one result. So we have employee ID and employee name for this copy constructor. We do not provide, you can see we do not provide any values to this one. We only directly provide the first object, and it is copying the first object values directly to this copy constructor, where we are passing the instance of employee object. So this is all about the copy constructor. Next we have constructor overloading. So what is constructor overloading? The name specifies if we want to overload the constructor, that is constructor overloading. Multiple constructors with different parameters. If we have a need arises where we want to create multiple constructor, we can create multiple constructor but with different parameters. So parameter should be different, not same. If it is same, then compiler will throw us an error. So here we have a multiple constructor, means first one default constructor, second one is parameterized constructor, where we are passing two parameter values, and simply we are passing these values. Now let's see the constructor overloading concept. Overloading. So we can uncomment this one. This is default constructor and this one is parameterized constructor. We do not need this copy constructor. So if we want to overload these constructors, so this is overloading, where we have multiple constructor with same name but different parameters. Suppose if we want to create a multiple constructor with the same parameter, so it is throwing an error because we can't create an same constructor with the same parameters. So parameter should be different, like this one. Second, we can do this constructor also. Now we have 4 constructor inside this one class. So this is constructor overloading with parameterless constructor, where 3 constructors we have with the parameters. First one is with 2 parameters, second one we have with 1 parameter with integer parameter, second one we have string parameter. So this is constructor overloading concept. And if we want to display all these values, then how we can display it? Now let's see this one, how we can achieve this one. First one is parameterized constructor with 2 values. So this one is parameterized constructor. Default constructor. Employee. So this is default constructor. We provided already the value inside this default one. So let's change the name. Default constructor we have, here we have different name. So here we have the okay, so this one is default constructor. Next default constructor. Next constructor we have with 1 parameter value. 1 value means only integer value. The 1 value. with the integer value. So this one is for integer value. Second one, we want to create a constructor for integer one, employee with string value. String value. Okay, so we have 4 constructor here, means this is called constructor overloading. Same constructor name but different parameters. Now let's see this one result. So we have all the values of 4 constructors, means constructor overloading values. First one, we have parameterized constructor with the 2 values, where we have employee ID and employee name. Second, we have default constructor with the 2 values, this one employee ID and employee name. Third one, we have parameterized constructor with integer value only, where we created one constructor with only integer value. So this one is the integer value. But here is the thing, here we have string value also, not with this one constructor, but we are using this method. So here we are passing employee ID and employee name, so it is considering employee name as null. So here we have null values, that is not displaying. Next one, we have constructor that is having string parameter, and we have string parameter value, and according to this method we are getting this ID also. But here is the thing, we do not provide any value to this employee ID. It is displaying 0 for integer, as we initialize 2 fields inside this class, so it is considered 0 if we do not provide any integer ID. So this is all about the constructor overloading concept. So here is the thing, constructor name should be same but not the parameters. Parameters always different for all constructors, otherwise it will gives an error, means compiler throws an error. Next one, we have private constructor. So what is private constructor? It is used when object creation is restricted outside the class. So private constructor is that which we do not want to create the instance outside of class. If a need arises where we only have the need to create the instance inside the class only, not outside of class, so in that scenario we can use private constructor to restrict the creation of instance outside the class. It is often used in singleton design pattern. So it is mainly used in singleton design pattern where we have one instance. So we will also discuss about this topic, but in next lectures. First we have to focus on this private constructor. Here we have private constructor, and here we are using one method with the static, so that is the return type, and here we have the constructor name, and then we create one method with the get instance. So here we are creating the instance inside the class, not outside of class. Here you can see we do not create the instance of the constructor, otherwise it will give us an error because it is not allowed. So with the method, we inside that method we create the instance, and then we can call any method, means log method. Now let's see this one in Visual Studio. Now let's see this one. Suppose now we are using this one, default constructor, parameterized constructor. So here is the access level is public. We already discussed about access levels, means access modifiers, access specifiers in the previous lectures. You can also watch these videos for better clarification. Now coming to the topic, if we are using this one, parameterless constructor. So here is the thing, the access level we can create the instance outside the class because its access level is public. Suppose if we set it private, now it is restricted, means creating an instance is restricted outside of class. So it is giving the error that it is inaccessible due to its protection level, means access level is not outside of class. We can only create the instance inside the class. So next thing is how we can create the instance inside the class. So in this way we can create so this one is creating instance of constructor. Okay, return new employee. Ping the instance inside the class. So here is the thing, we are creating the instance inside the class, not outside of class. So here we created an instance. Now how we can access here? So it is restricted, we cannot do in this way, we cannot use a new keyword. So how we can achieve this one? We can achieve this one with this. We directly use means directly call this static method, because in this way we can create the instance, because this access level is private, so we can only access it inside the class, not outside the class. So in this way we can create. Now let's see the result of this one, it will work or not. Now it is giving the values, means employee ID and employee name. So here you can see we do not create any instance outside of class in the main method. Here you cannot see any new keyword to create the instance. With this method we are creating instance inside the class, and through this one we call this method to display the values. Now let's see this one. Here we have default constructor where we set the access specifier, means the level to private. So we cannot create an instance outside of class. We do in this way, we are creating the instance inside the class. So this is all about the private constructor, how we can initialize it, how we can instantiate it. Next we have today's summary. So let's revise what we learned today. First one, we have constructor, a special method used to initialize objects when a class is instantiated. So constructor is a special method to initialize the objects. Suppose we have any class where we want to initialize it, first we have to create the instance, and then it is initializing the objects, means provide some values. Next one, we have some types of constructor. The first type is default constructor, a constructor with no parameters that initializes default values for a class fields. Default constructor is also known as parameterless constructor, where we do not provide any parameter to that constructor. So that is default constructor or a parameterless constructor. And if we do not provide any constructor to that class, the compiler will create automatically. Okay, so there is no need, if we do not want to create any constructor, it will create automatically default constructor, but that is default constructor, means parameterless constructor. Next we have parameterized constructor, a constructor that accepts parameters to initialize an object with specific values. Parameterized constructor name suggests that if we want to send some parameter values through that constructor, then we can do with constructor that have parameters. Next constructor we have copy constructor, a constructor that creates a new object by copying data from another object of the same class. So copy constructor is that where we create a new object, but we do not provide any value to that second object. We directly copy the first object values directly to the copy constructor. So that is copy constructor, where we do not provide any value, we use the first object values. Next one, we have overloading of constructor, defining multiple constructors in the same class with different parameters list for flexibility. So constructor overloading, we also saw this one also, where we can create multiple constructors with the same name but different parameters. So this is the thing you have to remember, like we have same constructor name but different parameters. So parameters should be different, not same, otherwise it will throw an error if we have same parameter name. Private constructor. A constructor declared private to restrict object creation from the outside the class, often used in singleton patterns. Private constructors are that where we want to set the protection level, means access specifier value where we do not create the instance of that particular class. So that is private constructor. We only create the instance inside the class. So it is access level. So this is all about the constructor and types of constructor. You can practice them into your Visual Studio. If you have any doubts related with these all topics, you can mention them into the comment section. So let's wind up today's session. Thanks. See you in the next lecture.